The Belko experiment. So the Belko experiment starts out in this building, this office building in the middle of buttfuck nowhere. Right there, that's a red flag. If you're in a pretty expensive, pretty put together office space in the middle of nowhere, yeah, run for your life. This shit's gonna go down. And as everyone's going la-di-da, work is good, John C. McGinley plays a creep, but life is good, the place locks down, like blast shields come over all the windows, all the doors seal off, no one can get a cell phone signal. This voice comes over the intercom, it's like, hello everyone, you're part of an experiment. X amount of people need to die, otherwise we're gonna kill twice as many. And then when they find out these people mean business, that's pretty much what it is. A bunch of people locked into a building and they have to kill each other off or be killed. But I'm not gonna lie, you hear that and this movie could have been a fascinating social study. It's not. At that point, hopefully it's a fulfilling enough guilty pleasure gorefest film. So what I liked about Belko Experiment ultimately is the premise. You hear the premise, you're like, yeah, that could go one of 100 different ways depending on what you want to showcase in this movie. But this movie never really takes that dive into being interesting, fascinating, asking the questions. This movie never really takes the plunge to take an average, ordinary person and make them a killer because of their situational circumstance. I mean, you could argue it happens with a couple people, but not really. Generally speaking, in the movie, the ones you could pick out, like, all right, in a situation like this, that person, they're gonna get alpha male dick, and they're gonna try to alpha male dick everybody and kill people. And in the movie, those ones do. This movie also has some cheesy ass dialogue, overacting, and some bizarre ass cartoon characters. Like John C. McGinley, right when you meet him, you're like, you're creeping out, but you're a cartoon creep. And if that's what the movie's going for, great, but it's not funny enough to actually be satire. You just watch it, you're like, this looks like it's the makings of a bad movie. Kind of like some of these people in the movie, they're bad actors. They're just extras who, like, this guy's supposed to be crying because he's really stressed out, but his cry is so cartoon cry, which again would work if this movie was funny or clever enough to be satire or a comedy. It's not. Like, there's this stoner dude who always says man, like, hey man, they're putting it in the water, man. I'm like, what are you, a 90s stoner? What year does this take place? Oh, they all have droids and cell phones, so it's not the 90s. So tonally speaking, it was just up, down, and all over the place. When the shit goes down, it's actually pretty entertaining. And that's where it's just guilty pleasure territory. Like, have a couple beers with some buddies, like, hey, let's watch Belko Experiment. Then you watch it, you get out, you're like, all right, cool, we watched Belko Experiment. Like, the dicks are dicks, the nice people are passive, and the people in the middle are conflicted. But that's what it is. None of the nice people really become conflicted or maybe dicks, and none of the dicks really become conflicted and then maybe nice people. There is a character who is in the middle, but he's one of the conflicted, and it doesn't really give you the juice you want. And I don't know if this movie was skimping on budget, but the scale of it just doesn't feel as big as it wants to be. Like, the intercom's like, there are 100 and something odd people who work in this office building. You're like, I count about 23, but okay, 100 and something. When I say this movie's tonally all over the place, here it is right here. It's like Belko Experiment wants to be a dark comedy, but it's not funny enough to be a comedy, so it can't be a dark comedy. It wants to be an interesting social study on the boundaries of humanity and where does murder lie in it, but it swings to the spectrum of cheesy so often that it can't be that because it doesn't take itself seriously enough to be that. Or maybe it's just a fun guilty pleasure movie with bad acting because that's what it's going for. I can't peg this film anywhere, but if I had to assess, I'll say the movie does not succeed in what it tries to do. There's one arc in particular that doesn't go anywhere. Like, you think there's going to be big payoff to this arc, and in the end, that person just gets killed and it's done and over. And you can tell it wants to be ironic, like, yeah, but that's the point. Anybody can die. But you don't think that you're just left with that, well, what the fuck was the point of concentrating on that person ever? You feel like any time spent on that character was just wasted time. Like, that they were a time sink. Guys, in the end, the Belko Experiment was interesting enough if you can just turn your brain off and enjoy the gore fest that you're about to get. Don't go into this movie looking for all the acting to land. I feel like this is kind of what the first Purge movie did. It had an interesting premise, didn't execute it to its fullest. The flaws really brought down the entirety of the film. Hopefully for the sequel, they listen to fan feedback for the first movie and they make a sequel that we can sink our teeth into. That's how the second Purge movie was for me anyway. I enjoyed it. However, for the Belko Experiment, I will say it'd be a better time if you're drunk. Yeah, no, it's a party. All right, guys, so the Belko Experiment. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever you thought, comment below. Let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.